Alright, so now it's finally time to combine arrays and for loops together. So we're going to create this array and we're going to iterate through it and just print each element in the array. And we're going to see how much faster this is to let the loop do the work rather than manually printing each element. Because we can accomplish in just a couple of lines of code what would take us maybe hundreds of lines to do the same thing, okay? So you'll see exactly why arrays and loops go hand in hand. Alright, so I know I've been raving a lot about how well for loops and arrays go together. Well, now we'll actually be able to see them work together, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create this array and I'm going to use the for loop to iterate over the array and print out the values of each, or the values in the array at each specified index. Okay, so I'm going to create this array and let's call this weekdays. Okay, and it's going to just be a string array, and as I'm sure you can guess, it's just going to contain the weekdays Monday through Friday. So we're going to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay. So we've initialized this array. It's an array of strings, contains 5 strings. So the item at weekdays of 0 is Monday, weekdays of 1 is Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, and finally weekdays of 4 is Friday. Because remember, indexing in arrays starts at 0. So this is index 0, index 1, up until index 4. Okay, so what we're going to do is, again, we're going to use this loop to print out the weekdays at each specified index. So how do we do this? Well, let's first set it up. We'll use, I'm going to use index from now on just to kind of make this a little easier to understand. So we're going to say for index in, and we're going to start from 0 to 4. And then we're going to take each array and print it out. Now, or each part of the array and print it out. Now a couple things to note before I fill in the body of this for loop is I'm starting at 0 and I'm only running until 4. Why am I doing that? Why am I not running from 1 to 5? Well, to recall, this loop will start at 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, and finally 4. Okay, so this is going to be 5 times that this runs. First time when index is 0, and the last time when index is 4. Well, how many values do we have in our array? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This loop is, in this case, going to run 5 times. If we had a 1, then this would only run 4 times. If we could change this to 5 and have it run 5 times, and that's okay, but remember what I just said about indexing in arrays? It starts at 0. So if we start at 1 and run till 5, then we'll print out the index of 1 first, and that will be starting with Tuesday, and then index 5 in this array doesn't actually exist. In some languages this can cause a lot of errors because there aren't what we call array bounds checking, where the compiler doesn't allow you to access items outside of an array. It would just throw what's called a segmentation fault, but luckily in Swift 3 that's not something we need to worry about. Just be careful that if you're indexing through arrays, you want to start at 0 and end at 1 less than the length of the loop. So we could say 4. If we didn't know, we could call the length function on weekdays. So just see how long weekdays is. So let's see what function that would be. Weekdays dot, so we could do append capacity. Count would be the number of elements in the array. And yeah, so lots of different functions we can call. Count, however, would return, so it's the number of elements that can be contained. So count, the number of elements in the array, would return 5, but we're only running until 4, so we'd have to do weekdays.count minus 1. Okay, so if you don't know the size of your array, like this one we know is short, it's only 5 elements, but if you don't know, then it might be a good idea to replace this with this. I'm just going to put this in brackets so that the compiler knows that's 1 unit. Okay? And yes, I know we don't have a body in the loop yet, but I just want to get this loop set up, and I want you to be able to understand why we're starting at 0 and running to 4 rather than 1 to 5. Okay? So we want to call weekdays of 0, weekdays of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so that's why we're doing this. So I'm just going to get rid of this. And now if you recall in our arrays video, how did we access elements of an array? Well, we call the array name, weekdays, and we give the specified index in these brackets here. In this case, we want first index of 0. But if we were to do this, this just prints out weekdays of 0 5 times, which would just be Monday printed out 5 times. So if we did this, then what happens? There you see, we get Monday printed out 5 times. And that's because we have specified a specific number, a specific index, and so it just prints out only that. However, if we were to use index, then we get printed out what we want. We get Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then Friday printed out. Okay, so why is this exactly? Well, recall from our previous part of the tutorial, if we're printing out, or if we're calling index, it calls whatever current value it's on. Okay, so the first time this loop iterates, index will be 0 because we specified it to be 0 here. So it's going to call weekdays of the current value of index, which is 0, so weekdays of 0, and that's going to be Monday. The next time this loop iterates, it's going to again print out the current value of index, but the second time index will contain the value 1, because it increases by 1 each time. Then that would be calling weekdays of 1, which will be Tuesday. And then so on will be Wednesday, and then Thursday, and then finally Friday, which will be when index is equal to 4, which is weekdays.count minus 1. Okay, and again, the reason I use this is because we might not know the length of the array. Okay? So this is how to print out specific values of an array. This was just something simple. We were just accessing elements and then printing them out. You can do something a lot more complicated if you want. So if we wanted to change the values, then we could do something like this. We could do weekdays of index equals, I don't know, 5 or something. Well, no, we can't do that because it's a string array. We could say there hello, and it would change all of the items in our weekdays array to be hello. Okay, so that's one thing we can do. We can change values of an array. We can access values of an array. So yeah, we can do lots of different things. We could even combine all these elements into a string. So if we create this variable, and we'll call this combined days, so type string, and we're just going to give an empty string to start off with. If we could say combined days equals plus equals weekdays of index. Okay, and then if we print out combined days at the bottom, what do we get? Combined days would turn into this big string, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay, and that's because what we did here is we basically just took the current value of combined days, which was just an empty string, and we set it to be that string plus each of the weekdays at the specified index. Okay, so lots of different things we can do with arrays and loops. It's just a great way to iterate through the entire array quickly and perform the same function rather than having to call it many times. Okay, so what did we have before? We just had print, so I'm just gonna set this in a comment there, and I'm going to copy that, and we just had print this. Okay, So there we have it. So these are some of the things that we can do with indexes and arrays. I'll just summarize what we've looked at so far. So we just created this string array which contained the weekdays, Monday through Friday. Then we had this variable combined strings. So the first time we went around, we just went through, well, first of all, we looked at the count. So array indexing starts at 0. It's a good idea to start your loops at 0 then, or else you'll miss the first element of the array. And we ran until weekdays.count -1, and that's because the weekdays.count would return 5, and we can't access the 5th index because it doesn't exist in this array. Okay, that's why we did the -1. In this particular, the first time we went, we just printed the weekdays at the index with each loop. So index starts at 0, so it's printing weekdays of 0, then weekdays of 1, then 2, then 3, and then 4. And that's what we saw down here on the console. Second time we went around, we just kind of combined this string, so we just took whatever the index of the array was and just added it onto this string. So basically just took every element in this array and combined it into one long string. Okay, so these are some of the things you can do with indexes and arrays. Strongly recommend you check out some other stuff because it's a really cool way to go through this array without having to call this, 5 or 10 or 100 times depending on how long your array is. Okay, so hopefully you can see why the two go so well together, and we'll look at some more stuff you can do with arrays in this next part. Okay, so in this part we looked at how well arrays and for-in loops go together. So we just created this string array which contained the days of the week, and we iterated through it and just had the loop print out each element by calling the print statement and then passing in the index or the name of the array at the specified index. So we talked about with arrays how to access an element at an index. Well, we just had the current index of the for loop put in the index spot, so it just printed out which element of the array was kind of correlated with the current index. So if the index was on 1, then it would print out the array element at index 1, and so on and so forth. And in this way we saw that we could easily print out all of the elements in an array using only a couple of lines rather than possibly hundreds of lines if the array was hundreds of elements long. We then went through and we changed each element of the array, again using the very similar procedure where we just kind of called each element of the array at the index of the loop, and then we changed it to a different value, and also we combined them into a string. So we just kind of looked at a few different things that we can do with arrays and loops and saw how much easier they make our life.